Hey there, I'm back from my break, but I know you don't care, so let's just talk about Smash. This game is still alive, right? Yeah, we're good, okay. Quick refresher, in this series I just go over the trivia section of various Smash Wiki articles and talk about things that I thought were neat. In today's video, we'll be starting out with Roy and going to Dark Pit, alright? Let's do some house cleaning first. I had a lot of comments in my last video talk about how the wiki didn't mention that Lucina's Tharja outfit actually has a different cape than the rest. All the others have this crest on the back, which is an emblem from the Awakening game, which means things and stuff, while the Tharja alt's cape has 3 eyes instead, which through context clues tells me that this is a classic Tharja reference. And while I didn't see any comments about it for some reason, the Tiki alt also has a unique symbol on the cape. You can't see it, of course, because the lighting of the stage blocks it out when I zoom in, so unfortunate. Okay, whatever. Okay, here's what it looks like. It's dragons and stuff. Once again, a certified Tiki reference. They're pretty neat details. But the thing is, like, these aren't in Lucina's character trivia section, but it is mentioned in the alternative costume section. If you're going to take anything away from this, it's that wikis are very diverse in the topics that they cover, and thus this series has so much ground to cover that it may go on forever. Let's hope people stay interested in this game and channel for another year or two. Also, I had mentioned how you can use Ganondorf's up taunt to avoid the damage from the ground on moving stages like Mute City, SNES, and whatnot. And I got a lot of people asking me about other forms of ground damage. So here's a few tests. Trying it on the stage builder lava did not seem to work, nor did the similar type of lava on Great Cave Offensive. And while I could never really try it in the Spirit Battle lava floor, since invincibility items didn't spawn and I couldn't really use respawn invincibility, considering the up taunt doesn't make you avoid the sleeping effect of the sleep floor, and it doesn't make you stop taking damage from the poison floor, it's fairly safe to say that it just doesn't work for these types of things either. Alright, that's all that. If you want to know about more things and stuff, watch my previous videos anytime, but for now let's talk about Roy. First, the wiki mentions how Roy's idle animation will revert back to Marth's when he's holding an item, but you can see that normally he moves his sword up like this, but when holding the item he looks a lot more similar to Marth, though without any of these special movements like taking a deep breath or whatever. And it also mentions how crouching when holding an item will change this animation, but we've covered all that in the past. Speaking of the past, we also mentioned that there are exceptions to which items change the character's animations, and while I only mentioned it for crouch animations, this also happens for idle animations that change. Those exceptions being all items marked as battering, all marked as shooting, and including the motion sensor bong, boomerang, and the banana. Going forward, assume that this is the case for all facts where items change in animation of some kind. And if that's not the case, then I'll bring it up. Speaking of animations, it's mentioned how when Roy uses a shooting item while grounded, he puts his sword away in the sheath on his left side. Also, just gonna really quickly add this in after the fact, but I call it a sheath for this section because that's what the wiki called it. But it'd probably be more fitting to call it a scabbard. Like, I don't think sheath is wrong, but I guess it's like calling a square a rectangle, or something like that. I don't know, there's a whole rabbit hole that I went down. Just felt like I'd bring that up. So anyways, ignoring the fact that this transition is instant, since sometimes animations are just like that, the weird thing about this is that Roy doesn't have a sheath, like normally. This is likely an oversight when they borrowed animations from Marth. You see, Marth also puts his sword away in his sheath when using a shooting item while grounded, but you know, he also has that sheath there normally, so it just makes more sense. So Roy just sort of manifests a sheath solely for when he needs it, which is kind of a handy feature, I guess. Also, when using shooting items in the air, they don't put their sword away, nor when they're shooting while landing, it's just when grounded. Also, funny enough, this whole shooting a weapon while grounded thing also refers to the spirit board shooting thingy. You can see the magic sheath right here, just barely hanging out. It's pretty funny. My thanks to the Sheik who just KO'd herself to help me out in testing. That was real nice. Continuing with animations, it's mentioned how Roy's dash in his character showcase video was different than what it is now. In the final release, his dash is reused from Smash 4, I guess. But in the showcase, while we can only see it for a few seconds, it does seem a bit different. Like, it has more hop to it, maybe a little less stiff, and his body looks more tilted with his sword arm moving less. I don't know, it's hard to analyze too much given how short the clip is, but it certainly feels different. I wonder what made them change it in the end. Anyhow, next, the second hit of Roy's neutral air is actually weight independent for some reason. We've gone over this topic a few times on the channel before, but basically that means that the knockback's calculation ignores the factor of weight. meaning Bowser, the heaviest character in the game, gets KO'd at around 155% from this, and Pichu, the lightest character in the game, also gets KO'd around 155%, give or take due to various inconsistencies in hurt box size and all that. As is the case for other examples of weight independent knockback that I've seen, the fact that it ignores weight doesn't mean it's a mistake, but here it very likely is because none of the other Marthys have this issue with their neutral airs. The second hit of Marth's tipper neutral air starts KOing Pichu at around 90 and Bowser at around 135 or so. And the same type of differences are there for Lucina, and surprisingly also Chrom, despite him being an HD remaster of Roy. The thing is, Marth, Lucina, and Chrom do all have that weight independent feature on their neutral air, but it's just for the first hit. This is likely to make it more consistent to combo into the second hit for the entire cast, which makes perfect sense. Then you got Roy over here, where his first hit is weight dependent. So while it starts KOing Pichu at around 746-ish, it doesn't even KO Bowser at 999%. So clearly these values got mixed up, which is pretty funny, especially considering that it doesn't even affect Chrom. Speaking of Chrom, the wiki talks about how, in Smash 4, the Palutena's guidance for Robin guest stars Chrom, where the cast pokes fun at him for not being in the game and how he's too similar to Ike, or rather, a carbon copy of Ike. This alone is just poking fun at the existence of both Pit and Dark Pit and other such carbon copies in that game, at least I imagine, you know? But it does really make you think that he would have been modeled after Ike in Smash Ultimates, right? I mean, sure, they did give him something similar to Ike's recovery, but like, that's it. Everything else is just a carbon copy of Roy, which therefore just makes him a carbon copy of Marth. Okay, well I guess not quite carbon copy, but I guess, I don't know, hydrogen copy, yeah. Anyways, this is funny, but it also kind of bums me out a bit, cause unironically, Roy on his own is pretty similar to Marth and Lucina. So having an Echo Fighter for someone who's essentially an Echo Fighter for someone who already has an Echo Fighter, it's weird, right? If they were going to be redundant, doing so on someone like Ike who doesn't actually have an Echo Fighter would have been a lot cooler, but this horse has probably already been beaten to death, and I doubt anything I just said has been too original, so... Next, it's mentioned how when Chrom goes into freefall, his animation likely reverts to Roy's. Now, you can't normally see Chrom's freefall animation since Aether 2 doesn't really let that happen, but using Pac-Man's trampoline, we can force the freefall, and here we see that Chrom holds the sword backwards in his hand, a position that he never uses throughout his moveset, but that Roy uses very frequently. And a quick comparison shows that basically everything about this animation is identical. Makes sense why it was overlooked considering how rare it is to see, but yeah. Continuing with Chrom having leftovers from Roy, this wasn't in the wiki, but on my Discord, Zekfox mentioned how Chrom's neutral special is still referred to as Flare Blade, the same name that it is for Roy. This is despite the fact that there's not a single particle of fire in the move at all. It seems to have more elements of wind and I guess earth with the rocks at the end or whatever. I mean, I guess maybe there are some flames and a big explosion at the end, but that's not really a flare blade, you know? More like a wind blade. They even took out the mention of fire that was in Roy's descriptor for Chrom's new one, so I don't know, that's just pretty funny. Alright, let's move on to Mr. Game & Watch. First, when the match loads, or when you get a final smash, or even just parry a move, you'll see a little effect play over Game & Watch's portrait. This is the effect that always plays over the character's eyes, if they have any, for added flair. It's pretty cool. So yeah, what that means is that, while you can't see it, Mr. Game & Watch has eyes. Which is a thought that I'm not sure how I feel about. I wonder what it's like to have eyes on your sides while being 2D. Well, actually, while Game & Watch appears flat in the in-game camera, he's still a 3D model, which can be seen in a few ways. The best being through some final smashes, which show Game & Watch at many angles that definitely make him appear 3D. But another good way is the metal box. He's still 2D in the camera, but he's got like the curves and whatnot of a spherical object, right? However, when you use moves that transform Game & Watch, you'll notice that the texture of the metal changes. It's no longer spherical-ish, but rather looks more like you banged a sheet of metal flat. At the very least, it's not the same appearance as when he's idle, or using things like his up smash and whatnot. While it's hard to say for sure, this does imply that perhaps, while Game & Watch himself is rendered in 3D, maybe these transformations are actually a full, true 2D, which is weird to think about. Also, this isn't necessarily related to him using the metal box or anything, but apparently the manhole in his down tilt is just completely 3D. I have no idea how I didn't notice that before, but it feels awfully cursed. And speaking of Game & Watch transformations, in his showcase trailer, his down smash looks a bit different than it does now. His eyes are wider with larger hair and a more closed mouth. The current version, on the other hand, feels more accurate to the actual Game & Watch vermin appearance. So that's a neat little change. Next, it's mentioned how in every single language option for Mr. Game & Watch's tag, it'll include the Mr. portion of the name, just the same, even if the rest of the name is changed to match the language. It makes sense since a lot of characters' names act like this, but what's especially interesting is that the only exception to this is Russian, which keeps the Game & Watch the same, but uses their own version of Mr., which you can see right here. It's interesting that Russian is the only language to change this part, even though the other languages have their own variant of Mr., or at least something close, I imagine. I have to wonder why this is the case. If you know anything about that, leave a comment below. I know nothing about this language or culture, but yeah, that's cool. Also, I just couldn't get over how Dark Samus's name in German is Dunkel Samus. Like, okay, I know that Dunkel means dark in German, but come on, Dunkel Samus? I mean, that just sounds hysterical. Alright. Speaking of language and culture, at the end of Game & Watch's classic mode, the celebration photo will show Game & Watch using Judge, showing a 3 and a 9. Have you ever wondered what the point of that was? It's closely representing how old Game & Watch is, with his first appearance being in 1980. But since Smash Ultimate released in 2018, that would only make him 38 by the time of its release, which is close but not quite right. Well, if we were to say these numbers in Japanese, we would get San and Q. Put them together, you get Sankyu, which is just thank you. So that's pretty likely what it's just referring to. Though given how close it is to Game & Watch's age at the time, I wonder if it's connected in any way. Either way though, I still think it's probably just that type of Japanese number pun. Next up with Meta Knight, it's mentioned how with his rapid jab, the sound effects of the sword swings don't fit in time with the actual animation. Now obviously if you look at it normally, it's just like, yeah, look at him go. But slowing all the way down, we can actually hear the individual slice sounds. This alone honestly amazes me, how they didn't just slap over random groups of sounds to the animation, that there's an actual attempt here to make it match. That's not the type of thing you usually notice. But the prompt said that they were out of sync, right? Well, if you're like me at all and watch this for a while, things might actually seem like they fit together. But I think that's just our brains filling in the gaps to make it all work out. When I look at the file in my video editor and play things out even slower, yeah, they aren't actually synced up. I guess the older version of the move is slower, so that's where this issue is from. It's kinda crazy though. Also, you can see the loop point of this animation right here. It just goes right back to the start in one jarring frame. Again, I love seeing normally super fast animations slow down like this. You always find something cool about it. Next up is Pit, who had nothing I was interested in. Okay, well, I mean, he had a model gap fact. But due to the suggestions in the comments of my last video after I brought it up, I won't be touching on those types of facts going forward. Unless I guess it's something super amazing somehow. So now Pit is left out, sorry bud. Moving on to Cooler Pit. You know how for their up specials, Pit's wings turn blue, and Dark Pit's turn green? This sorta echoes who's watching over whom. Palutena for Pit, and Verity for Dark Pit, which is confirmed in a Palutena's Guidance conversation. However, in the World of Light trailer, we see that when Palutena gets vaped, both Pit and Dark Pit lose their flight, even though only Pit should have been powered by Palutena at that time, supposedly. Although also in this trailer, Dark Pit's wings are blue, so I guess you could argue that Palutena was giving him flight at that time so that they could escape or something, though I don't know why Verity wouldn't do that, especially since she wasn't there, so she should have been safe from getting vaped, at least for the time. I don't know, that's just all speculation and whatnot anyways. It's kind of funny to think about it as a discrepancy though. And lastly for today, it's mentioned how apparently the original reason for Dark Pit being a separate character in the first place, instead of just an alternative costume, kinda like how Alf is for Olimar, was because of how Pit's final smash in Smash 4 was the 3 sacred treasures. Something Sakurai reasonably saw unfitting for Dark Pit to use. It makes sense, but it's such a small reason that it's really funny to think that this is why we got him as a whole separate character. despite all other violations of lore and canon that happen in Smash. It's also funny when you consider that this reason doesn't matter anymore, now that Pit uses Lightning Chariot as his final smash, which Viridi says is under her control, so if anything I don't know why Pit has it, but I mean both of them could use it now. But you know, since this is the ultimate Smash game, everybody here and whatnot, of course Dark Pit is going to stay a separate character. It's just kind of funny though. And yeah, that's it for today's video. Sorry about my absence there. If you saw my community post, you'll know that for a time I was having some pains in my wrists, or rather my whole arms, so I took time off to get that in check. It's still not perfect, but it's loads better. And you know, I feel like I can't take a break any longer. Even going for over a month feels like a total waste, but oh well. Not to mention, the longer you're away from a creative project of sorts, the harder it is to get started again. At least for me. But yeah, hope y'all keep liking the content, because believe me, if this wiki stuff successfully becomes a new channel series, there's a lot of potential going forward because, like I said at the beginning of the video, there are a lot of sections and subsections of the Smash Ultimate wiki, so we got a lot of fun things to chat about. Oh, but don't worry, the random facts format isn't dead in the ditch or anything. I'm just taking that easy so I can pile on cool facts for it. Preferably facts that aren't just from Examini 623, since at that point I'd have to call this series Examini 623 Facts, and I'm not sure if that rolls off the tongue well, or is good for YouTube thumbnails and titles, I don't know. So yeah, I hope to get back into the groove of things with like 2 uploads a month, 3 whenever I'm feeling really spicy. I think that's going to be my general goal for each month though, is around 2. It's good enough to still make the channel feel somewhat alive, but gives me plenty of time to continue studying Japanese and whatnot. Any other video will just be extra stuff if I feel like it, like music or Q&A or whatever. So with that, I'd like to thank my patrons Raighne, Skully, Sylvi1700, Burbo, SickanDaDank, and everyone else for their support. Stay casual, and I'll see y'all later.